This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, a vibrant online learning community providing high-quality educational content, the opportunity to connect with peers, and an outlet for new ideas in the field of nonprofit fundraising research. Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for Prospect Research professionals. This is the first in the Career Curious series. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Mark Koenig, Assistant Vice President for Advancement Services at Oregon State University Foundation.
So Mark, I've been dying to ask you since I've met you. I know that you are Assistant VP of Advancement Services. And, I've never worked in advancement services, so I don't really know what that is. I know that a lot of prospect research professionals aspire to that or take on those roles, and that there's more leadership opportunity, but I don't really know what it is. Would you be willing to share with us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. And I think advancement services is very different depending upon the organization that you're in. I haven't seen an advancement services model that's consistent across the board. Sometimes they have events, sometimes they don't, sometimes they have stewardship, sometimes they don't. And I think that's been, I think it's pretty consistent across the industry. In my world, advancement services is really a conglomeration of several, what we like to call cylinders of excellence, also known as silos, that were across our organization at one time. And those cylinders of excellence should have been working closer together, but didn't necessarily because of the way the structure was and who knows what. But about 6 years ago, I was presented the opportunity to build our advancement services shop. So what we did is we took 3 main units, which were IT. So at the foundation, we're a separate 501c3 from the university. So all of our IT infrastructure is housed inside the foundation. So we have our own server room. We provide our own phones, which I'm downloading iOS 10 right now, and all of that internally. Then I have the database group, which is basically the records entry and such, and the database management side. And then lastly, the research and relationship management teams. ITS is roughly about 7 or 8 people. Our data entry and data management group's about 3, and our research staff is 6. So the total team, and then we also have a lot of students. We use a lot of students for fill-in, and so anytime we're somewhere between 20 and 25 staff, which is not huge compared to some shops. I know some of my peers have 75 people, for example, but they also have gift processing, which gift processing here is housed in finance. Sometimes they have marketing and communications, and we work very closely with marketing and communications, but we're not in the same department. And sometimes advancement services, you asked about the secret, what is advancement services? And it's a lot of times I hear it called operations as well. Development operations.
Okay.
Operations. So that's my world.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, to call it operations. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, if you're operations, how are you interacting with the frontline fundraising staff?
Well, as you can, IT doesn't necessarily interplay, and neither does the database group, but research and relationship management do heavily. As they're the consultants, hopefully, to the development officers. So they have a lot of back and forth. And when I was recruited 8+ years ago now to Oregon State from George Washington University, when I was brought on board, our Executive Vice President Sean Scoville really wanted to have research and development and working with the development officers and helping them. So.
Okay. So who do you report to?
That's a very great question. I have a matrixed position, which is in organizational development. It means I have 2 bosses. So I don't have 2 dotted lines. I have 2 straight lines to the Executive Vice President for Development and the CFO, Steve Schaubel. And so because of those two, I report directly to them. I have two separate meetings. They work very well together, which is great because sometimes with a matrix position, you'll find that that can be a problem if you're having to juggle between two bodies. It's like having two parents, playing the parents off of each other and, that kind of stuff. You don't want that. So it's worked out really well, though.
That does sound interesting that one is not dotted. I've heard of the dotted line, but you actually fully report to both.
Well, and for us too, when you think of advancement services, I sometimes call us the glue because we're not just advancement, we're also the foundation. So there's the financial fiduciary side of things. So we manage and maintain all the systems for finance. They use Blackbaud's Financial Edge, for example, to do all the finance side of things. And so they're kind of two houses, and I call us the glue between the two of them. So it makes sense for the two lines because we service both of them.
Okay. Great. Well, now I'm wondering, when did you aspire to advancement services? If there was ever that moment where you said, here's what I want to do in my career.
I don't know about that. I had a pretty varied career growing up, or I'm still growing up, and I'm not sure what I'm going to be when I grow up. But I can't say that I aspired to it. Well, I think what I did enjoy was I always enjoy the projects that I work on, and I take a certain glee and joy in doing a really good job in those. And I think that probably opened many doors for me over the years, including the door that was opened for me in this case. So,
how long have you been at Oregon State?
Over 8 years now, about 8 plus years. So, and I've been in advancement since 2000, maybe late 1999, when I started at Rice University in Houston, Texas, as a researcher.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't start as a researcher. That's the funny thing. I actually started as a file room clerk. So I got my foot in the door, so to speak, and maintained the file room for about a month or two. And they said, "What are you doing maintaining the file room?" And gave me a job in research. So
that's great. Yeah. Well, that's great experience, though.
No, it was a really good experience. The maintenance of the files, I have a particular organizational skill that I love personally, and I'm really organized. And just the file room in itself, I mean, with so many projects that you have to keep in, it's just, I especially love those medical files that have the 5 areas and you can put things in there's okay, anyway, I'm getting a little OCD.
It's completely resonating with me. I started my career as a legal secretary, and I remember my very first job, I was 17, and they had the different colored file folders. This was personal injury, and I was dreaming about how I could put my life into the different folders.
Well, I always loved the tabs because we had the tabs at Rice where you could fold them over, and they had letters and they had different colors, they had different meanings, and it was you should see if I could pull my screen over, I'd show you my email. It's all color coded and compartmentalized the same way. So I think it must be a common researcher trait. Now, if I were to say where I got my researcher roots, I'd have to go even back to probably high school and my father, who was always told me to be a generalist in everything I did. So I always learned a lot about a lot of different things. So I ended up taking multiple languages. I changed my major 5 times. I was a math major. I was a history major. I was a geography major. I was an economics major. I mean, I went through the whole gambit. And I think that was part of it. And then I did have a stint for a couple of years when I was moving around the country in my younger days. I worked as a pawnbroker for a couple of years where I actually learned to evaluate products. So as you can imagine, in the pawn industry, we take items in for loan and you have to know about a lot of different things. So I'm actually a certified gemologist. So I can actually grade diamonds and tell you the value of gold, all of that good stuff. And not to mention all the other items you might see, from stereo equipment to guitars, so a Les Fender versus another type of guitar, and firearms. So all of that background, I think, led to my career in research, because in research, you're always trying to learn about something different, whether it be a lawyer or a doctor or somebody else. You've got to learn about their career and what does it mean to be a partner versus entry level, all those things. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
That's great. So you were valuing things from very early on.
Very early on.
And you missed your calling for the reality TV shows. Oh
Oh no,
no.
that's so not real. That is just so not real. It's a very depressing, not a lot of fun. I did it for a year and a half and said, "Oh my goodness, I had to get another." I said, I basically at that time I had a career mainly in retail. I'd worked all the way through. I started working at 15. I worked at Taco Bell, and then I started working pretty early on at Office Depot. Back in I'm dating myself, back in the late 80s. And Office Depot was a new company back then. It was Office Supply Company. Wow, and not to just hang out at Office Supply Company is great, but it was really based on customer service. So I was actually the customer service manager there for a while. And then from that experience, I learned a lot of, how to work with customers, angry customers, happy customers, all of that. It's really served me well over the years.
Yeah, it's so interesting that your father's advice was to be a generalist. I'm not sure what people's advice would be now.
Oh, I'm a strong supporter of liberal arts education, and I think we're underserving it. If you look who's hiring people, they're not hiring the really strong engineer. They're looking for people that can communicate. They're looking for people that can speak multiple languages, people that can actually, and when you talk about the development side, I mean, I think that's the thing for researchers is understanding what the development officers do. You're not in your world really concerned with your stuff. You're trying to figure out how you can communicate to others outside your area. And that's really, when you get down to advancement services, that's what you do. I mean, there's plenty of projects I have no idea what I'm working on. I should say that. But there are times I don't know what I'm working on, but I still have enough knowledge of it to be able to navigate through it. And I think that's that's undervalued. So.
One of the other things I noticed about your LinkedIn profile, it was a little confusing at first, the chronology of experience. And that was because you've had your volunteer leadership roles weaved in there, and a lot of it with CASE,
Right.
the Council for Advancement,
Council for Advancement and Service to Education.
There we go.
Yep.
I know it is CASE. I always forget what it means.
Copy and steal everything. Or they want to go away from copy and steal. It's collaborate and share everything. So.
That's great. I can remember that for sure. So tell me a little bit about how CASE has influenced your career. Why do you volunteer so much?
Well, I think with CASE, I would say the same thing that I've been saying about the generalist side. What CASE provides you is the ability to see how alumni relations works, to see how communications and marketing works, to see how development works, to see how advancement services works, and how they all fit together. Because at the end of the day, our mission, of course, is advancement of the university's mission and such. So in that way, you really understand how you play a role in all of those parts. So,
is that because they're set up regionally? So, I mean, if you go to a district meeting or a district conference, it has all of those subjects as opposed to...
Generally, the district conferences do. They have those tracks, which are generally the cylinders of excellence, again, of each of those areas. And I often, when I have researchers or staff that are looking for opportunities to better understand what development is or advancement, I send them there as opposed to other places because, even with APRA, it's very specific to research, or NEDRA, or, all of the different, you have a lot of different ones. I didn't mean NEDRA, but what's the not the communications and donor relations one. I always forget.
AADRP?
Yes,
like that.
yes. And so you get very much siloed information, which it can be helpful. I mean, that's like to do your job every day, which is good. But to understand how you fit into the entire structure and how your work affects someone else and such, I think that's just a hugely valuable vantage point to be able to look from.
I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I've learned creating these courses, and with your help as well, for new researchers, their supervisors really want them to have a stronger understanding of fundraising. So when they come in from a different sector or the for-profit, and they may have some skills that relate to researching, but they don't understand fundraising, they really need both of those things.
Right.
So including that as part of a course, making it a little more broad-based, but I think it helps a lot. I've gotten great feedback from the supervisors, how it's changed their employees. She came back different, which is wonderful. And came back is a funny word because this is all online. So it's not like she went out to an institution. So I did have a couple of questions that I really wanted to ask. I didn't want to forget. And the one was, what were the top 3 things that have helped you most in your career? Dun, 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 dun.
Top 3 things most in my career. Building relationships with people. Being able to talk to the client, even if it's, if you're a researcher talking to a development officer, instead of just taking the request and whatever, just doing the work, really kind of creating that rapport where you can get more information out of them. It's the reference librarian side of research where I think it's an art that's kind of getting lost a little bit as we're thinking of all the things we can find online. But these reference librarians where they go and ask you several key questions before they get started looking for whatever project that you want, they're able to bring you back better information. So that's one, is building those relationships and understanding that. So let's see, what other things? Always being curious and keeping up with whatever it is that's of interest to you. I really do think that, especially for researchers, to be able to, although I said to be generous, there's still things that excite you or make you, you might be interested in international fundraising or political or what. But really focusing in on that, and you pick up things as you go. But I also recommend, even do it to our researchers here, is make them be generalists and try to think about, okay, hey, have you worked with this different unit before? And change their units up every year. That's something I learned at Rice. We changed our units almost yearly. And although we had some play in what we could choose, or, we could kind of debate over who got what, but it was really fun to be able to work with the music department, or to get to work with, I got the pleasure of being able to work with James A. Baker III in his public policy institute that he had at Rice's campus. So I used to get to prepare briefings and materials on Vladimir Putin, who is really a really short man. So hopefully he doesn't watch this and come and try to kill me. But that was a lot of fun, and that was the part that keeps it kind of entertaining for you. So if you can actually interweave your own personal, interests and the things that you like into what you do, doesn't make for a very rewarding career. Let's see, what's the third thing? Wow, I guess back to, I have a particular work ethic. I just really enjoy doing what I do. And I think that's kind of hard sometimes because everybody's, oh, it's work, it's a job, but at some point, that's what we do. I spend more time here than I spend anywhere else. If I don't enjoy what I do, it wouldn't matter what I did. I'd have to enjoy that because that's what I was doing all the time. Or at least I would hope I would. Or I'd find something else to do. But you really you throw yourself into it and really take advantage of opportunities when they arise. But a lot of that's just because I like to work.
I'm with you on that. I absolutely love the field of prospect research, and the variety within our field is just amazing, and how we can segue or cross over to all the different fundraising opportunities as well. People have taken so many different tracks there. It's just, or to be a solo in a small shop, where you get to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's really, as I think of my career going forward, there are opportunities if I look to going the direction of a small shop or a bigger shop or staying down the same course or what. That's a good point. And as you know, the other thing is I also completed a master's degree while doing this job. So that should say something about the level of, I'm always trying to learn new things and do things. And the degree program that I went through was really, really good. It really helped. So,
And that was at Oregon State,
that
right?
was at Oregon State. So, there's a really nice employee benefit of being able to do continuing education. And one of the things my father was also bugging me for the past, 45 years was, well, it's 45, but past many years was, why don't you go back and get a master's degree? Why don't you go back and get a master's degree? So,
Okay,
I
Dad.
hope he doesn't watch this.
Well, it worked.
Yeah, it worked. So,
Great. Okay, so last question for you, Mark.
yeah.
What advice do you have for researchers in the field who want to advance to leadership positions? So wherever they are, they want to keep going up the ladder, so to speak. What advice do you have for them?
Well, getting back to the relationship building, I think, and I alluded to this prior to our conversation just now, was I think a lot of people get promoted because they're lead production officers. They do a lot of work. They do work really well, and people go, I like the work he does or she does. Let's promote them. But when they get in those spots, they don't have the ability to create the relationships that are necessary to navigate the politics, the playing field that you have to deal with when you're in a management position. Your staff, whether it's dealing with your staff, well, whether it's dealing with other staff, whether it's dealing with your colleagues or managing up. It's just, I think that's really one of the challenges in some of these leadership roles. And I think sometimes people underestimate that step up to that leadership role. They think, well, it's a title. What's your end goal is a title. If your end goal is a title, it's probably not a good idea. But if your end goal is really to work in an environment where you're having to talk to a lot of different people, to have to negotiate things all day long, how to negotiate up, down, around. If you like that, then that probably is a really good opportunity for you, and to work on those skills, because those skills are going to be the ones. That's where most people, when they get into management positions, they're development officers, anyone else, that's where they usually have difficulties in the relationship side.
So how did you overcome those difficulties? Was there a particular course of education for yourself that you took?
No, I go back to the days of in my high school and college experience of working at Office Depot as a customer service manager. It really is so true. And I mean, really dealing with people and making people happy, and turning unhappy clients into happy clients. And that's really what it boils down to. Because you're at this point, I don't do a lot of work. I'm managing trains. I'm moving projects. I'm not writing profiles. I'm not getting to do the stuff that I used to enjoy doing. I'm really doing this all this relationship management piece, which is, I think, critical.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to say, I worked for a life insurance company for a number of years. I was the executive assistant to the executive vice president of operations. And so that was customer service for life insurance policies. So I took all of the customer service training because I could. It was there. It was almost like working at a university, but not. And yes, that was really valuable. Even simple things like when someone's extremely emotional with you. I've had the case where my supervisor was extremely emotional and just not being logical, and we had a deadline to get the grant out. And I was able to, address her emotional first so that then she could calm down and we could do the work. And if I hadn't learned that, it could have easily escalated. It could have been a fiasco, and it doesn't matter whose fault it is.
Right.
Ever.
And you just run into those and how to navigate them as best as possible. And I did. I was actually after the pawn shop, which I didn't get to the story. I couldn't do that anymore. It was too hard. It was soul draining. And I got the Windows 98 disk on how to learn how to use Office. And taught myself how to use all the Office applications, and went and got me a temporary position at Robert Half, and I became the front desk at Avalon Bay Communities, which is a real estate investment trust in Seattle. And eventually I worked my way up to a junior financial analyst at the company. But I worked also for the executive assistant of the Pacific Northwest region. And I learned so much in that process, from preparing board performance for big companies that would come in and look at investing at the real estate investment trust. And of course they'd want to, look at the property and figure out how you're going to turn this property from a 400 bed apartment complex to whatever. And that was really a lot of experience. I've taken a lot of that experience with me as well.
Well, that's really, it's all fascinating to hear. I did not know about you in the pawnbroker. You alluded to that in an email, and I was like, I think I'll probably learn that. I think so many in our field have such varied experiences, and it's great to hear that, having the varied experiences and expertise has led you to a path that's successful at Oregon State University.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I want to change it for the world.
And thank you for sharing it with us.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, Mark.
That was Mark Koenig, Assistant Vice President for Advancement Services at Oregon State University Foundation, in the first of our Career Curious series. For more prospect research resources, join the Resource Collections community at prospectresearchinstitute.org.